I walked into a brewery. I'm like, boys, what are we making today? Oh, Jen, we've made all our beer. We're not going to make anything until they tell us. I was like, how can you sit with an idle factory connected to the best water source in the United States and just wait? Hope is not a strategy.
Your distribution matters, your capital matters, and your clarity matters. And you're sort of handling all of those as you scale. The market will test your thesis, and your team will test your leadership, and investors will test your conviction.
If you don't have the word AI on the end of your company right now, it's very difficult. And we are the anti-AI investment. It doesn't get any less AI than water in a physical can. All the CPG people are saying, oh, Jen, you need to slow down. This is not how we do it. And I'm like, never in my lifetime would anyone tell me to slow down from Silicon Valley, ever. If I did everything the way it was done, we wouldn't be here.
Welcome to the Branding Laboratory, where we break down what it actually takes to build something real and not just something that looks good on your social media presence. I'm your host, Devo, and in every single episode, we are actually getting into real conversations, real challenges, and the kind of thinking that actually moves things forward with your brand, with your business, with your life. So whether it's your first time here or you've been riding with me for a while, thank you. I'm glad you made it back. Let's get into this. Welcome to the Branding Laboratory. If you have not been listening, because there are some people live listening right now, welcome to the show. As you know, this is not a highlight reel. My guest today is going to be proof of that. We are not looking for vanity tours. We're not looking for metrics. What we try to do is build a room where we can examine what it actually takes to build something real. And my guest today is going to talk about that and what that looks like for her. Today, we're going to dig into something very, very specific, centered around this idea of what does it take to build power from scratch, and what happens to you as a leader when that power starts to scale. So when a founder's growth outpaces their identity, and you hear me talk about identity all the time, and outpaces identity, outpaces structure, what does it look like when it outpaces the original model that we started to set out to build? And how do we stay humble to that? How do we stay true to our source? How do we stay simple? How do we stay, but still not losing scope, right? And so when we're building businesses, and most of you who are listening to this podcast right now, you are founders, you're entrepreneurs, you're scaling, you're raising capital, you're hiring people, you're carrying payroll, you're protecting culture, you're making decisions that affect other families, and that's different. And so today's conversation is about leadership under pressure. It's about identity. When momentum shows up, it's about building something rooted in community without losing its soul as it grows. And so that's where we're going. And we couldn't think of a better guest and a better person to have that conversation with than Jennifer Millard. She is the founder of Maine Love, like the state, M-A-I-N-E, Maine Love. It is a fast-growing canned water brand that started out rooted in Maine and is now she's now expanding beyond those state lines, I believe, right? And she believes if you don't come from power, you need to build your own. So she hires very intentionally. She talks about empowering people to find their lane and getting out of their own way, which is a huge topic of mine. Like, we are our worst enemies sometimes. How do we get out of our own way, right? And in the process, she's raising capital in a climate where capital is kind of getting tight. And if you're not following the markets and following currency and crypto and the dollar, money is tight right now. So Jennifer, welcome to the lab. Let's start right there.
Yeah, lovely to be here. Thanks for having me. We're super proud at Maine Love to be, we launched this business in June of 24. I had my first water in a can in November of 24 and did my first transaction in December of 24. We've had an amazing year in 25, positioned at over 600 doors in Maine and New Hampshire to date, launched in Maine. So really all my 2025 revenue is predominantly from Maine. Thrilled to have started in May with my primary distributor and finished the year at $500,000, which is a great first 6 months of an emerging beverage brand.
Everybody has water. Why are you creating water? Why was the compulsion, the draw to create more water?
So water is an enormous category. And I think the best indication of that is Liquid Death, right? Mm-hmm. And they have about 1% of the market, and they're going to go public at, $1.5 billion. So it shows that there's so much room in the market. But I really chose this vertical kind of two ways. I was originally going to start a mocktail company. And in that research, if you wander around 10 grocery stores, you're going to find that there's no section for mocktails. They might be in the juice aisle. They could be with soda. They could be with, all kinds of beverages, could be in the alcohol line, but it isn't defined enough by the retailer to command its own section.
I saw alcohol was at a 60% decline.
It is. And so you have sort of these converging theses here. So alcohol is obviously declining among Gen Z. That's sort of the first flag. And if you ask 100 of them, over 60% will say, what would you like to drink? I'd like to drink flavored healthy water.
Mm-hmm.
I have a call in the morning with a company in Dubai, and I want to have a clear head. Now, when I was 25, I would have had the beer and I still would have taken the meeting and I would have powered through, right? But I think today's generation is very mindful about what they consume and why. And so this converging trend, decline of alcohol, Maine has the most brewers per capita.
Of any state?
Of any state.
Really?
And 65.
What does that say about your population?
Old. Maine is the oldest state. Craft beer was born here. Rob Todd from Allagash Beer is the James Beard Award-winning member of the brewery community for craft beer. And so you have a lot of history. Plus, Revolutionary War, right? Beer was issued, not water, right? So you have a lot of history around alcohol in New England. Prohibition was actually started in Portland, Maine, believe it or not.
By the way, lovely city. I was there a couple of years ago. Some of the best seafood anywhere on the planet I've ever had.
Please come to Maine. It's just as you left it.
I have to tell you why I was in Maine a couple of years ago, so let's not forget that. All right, sorry, I'm digressing. I want to keep us on target.
I walked into a brewery, and I know the brewers here. I'm like, boys, what are we making today? Expecting to hear equipment moving. And, oh, Jen, we've made all our beer today. Okay, what are we making tomorrow? Oh, Jen, we're not going to make anything until they tell us, And so I was like, how can you sit with an idle factory connected to the best water source in the United States and just wait for the beer business to come? Hope is not a strategy here.
Wait, I need to pause. I need to pause for a second. I want to go back to the pause. Why, if you're the biggest beer drinking producers per capita, et cetera, why is beer production pausing? I'm sorry, I missed something there.
Because people are not drinking at bars.
Got it. Okay, so back to our original statement: drinking as an alternative. Okay, got it.
Okay. Like sort of decline.
Sorry, I thought I missed something, so I just want to make sure. No. Okay.
And so I set out. I walked over 40 breweries, and they all have the same problem.
Interesting.
We sit with this beautiful equipment that can produce beverages in cans, but at the time they built their facility, they built it to meet an alcohol standard, which is very low. So that's regulated by the ATF. They don't care about your health. Water is actually regulated by the FDA. And so to produce water out of a facility, they have to make the facility meet a GMP standard, a good manufacturing principle standard. And it's an industry standard. It's traditionally about hygiene, seal your floors, make sure your bathroom doors aren't opening on the floor, And so we've worked with 3 breweries to get them to vertically invest. I'm a big believer in all rising tides. This is a rising tides thesis here. Hal Varian would be proud he's the Google economist and writes most of the micro books. So the rising tides thesis is Hal Varian's thesis, interestingly enough.
You also seem to be a history buff. I'm hearing a lot of different.
I was a liberal arts major.
Okay.
You have a liberal arts mind. That's how you absorb things, right? I actually think that's what gives me an advantage in consumer, to be honest, is that I have great consumer empathy from prior lives in retail and software and other things that kind of bring me to this moment.
Okay, so you saw a gap in the market. There's a pause in the consumption and the production of beer. So you decided, can we capitalize on the greatest source of water and see where we go with that?
Yeah, let's start with water. I can always make a mocktail later. And what we ended up with is 5 SKUs, 3 that are flavored that we consider a mocktail bridge. They're wonderful with alcohol. They're beautiful by themselves. And then plain flat drinking water and sparkling water. That's for cocktails.
All right, pause. Questions. So are you in collaborative partnership with the local breweries who are producing this, or are you wholly owned by yourself or investors?
We are wholly owned by ourselves and our investors.
And so you're just paying it's a simple commerce fee for them to produce.
Yeah, so think about how Maine manages seafood, for example, where you have a co-op where you drop your lobster off, you get a boat price.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what I set up is a water co-op, distributed manufacturing between multiple brewers. So my biggest challenge was consistency, right? So spent a year doing a lot of testing, a lot of chemistry to get distributed manufacturing to get a perfect yield off of every batch, so you couldn't tell where it was made.
That's
It's not
great.
an easy project.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say a recurring project as well. How do you
For
keep
sure.
that standard? And then I didn't know much about water before. I know how to sell water. I know how to bring it to life. But the water chemistry itself, because this water source is so clean naturally by the trees, all we really do is remove the sanitation, which is chloridamite, that the city puts in. We remove that with a 1 micron filter and return the water to its original state. We don't add anything to it. We don't add any vitamins. We're not about jacking up the water here with super high alkaline or any of those functional pieces. This is just water.
Does Maine add fluoride to their water?
No, I do not believe that we are a fluoride community.
Because most of the country is.
Because this water system is so epic. And you have, I should follow up on that though. I don't believe so, but I need to check.
I would love to hear where you stand, because the reason I ask is there are counties, because water is controlled by counties here, from at least in North Carolina. It's a county by county situation, and I live in Union County, which is one of the smaller communities, and they just announced a year ago, and they've been removing it slowly, that now all water in Union County is fluoride free, whereas the neighboring county, which is the biggest county in North Carolina, is not. And there's sort of like a big brouhaha going on between the two counties. I digress.
It's kind of this big debate, right? If, is fluoride in your water poisoning you, or is fluoride in your water making your teeth stronger, right? Like, so, most people.
If we were on my other podcast, we would be. If we were on my other podcast, we would be unpacking that. But let me pause you there, because I do have a central couple of lists of questions I want to ask you. When you first started to build Maine Love, were you thinking you were building a product, or were you trying to build something that has a much bigger grasp? Were you trying to build power, to borrow your lexicon?
So really, my effort here is to enter Maine into the water economy. So if you read the Maine economic plan for the next 20 years, the word water does not appear one time. What is the difference between water, timber, lobster, blueberry, right? We're a big agriculture and aquaculture state. Why should drinking water be any different? And I think, when I first started talking about it in Maine, people would say, Jen, if you want water, just go to the faucet. I'm like, that's the point. You've not lived anywhere else. You take for granted that you have this epic water. I've lived in Austin, New Mexico, California, areas of water scarcity, poor water quality. And if you've lived in Maine all your life, you've had the privilege of having the best water. You don't know any different.
So would you say that your model is more based on export rather than just keeping it localized?
Yes. So this product is built on the nostalgia and the provenance of Maine.
So you want other states and other people to experience the Maine water rather than the people.
Correct. Okay, so we expect this to be a snowbird expression, right? Maine down the 95 corridor. I'm a big believer we should not be moving water. 50 states expression. Why are we moving heavy objects to the west?
Remind me, if you're interested, and I'm volunteering, to connect you with the gentleman, because you're talking about non-alcoholic beverages as well, and they have a similar model as well. But he has a drink that he's been developing for the last 3 years, and he's just now really broken into different markets, grocery stores, things of that nature.
Amazing.
But I would love for the two of you to connect. I think there's probably some good crossover. When you first built the version of the company, you're almost a year and a half in? Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, coming up on 2 years in June.
When you built the first version of this company with a certain version of yourself, right? So if you follow me on any particular podcast or any of my work, you sort of see every entrepreneur's business is built upon their identity, and sometimes those inflection points of your identity changes as you evolve, right? Do you think that the version of you now is equipped to lead this company to the next phase, or are you sort of thinking about how do I evolve as an individual to continue running this company as we evolve?
So my intention here is to run a beautiful company for a long period of time. My cap table is filled with beautiful lovers of Maine and people I've honestly, I was a software founder. So I've made some venture capitalists very happy. So I'm grateful to them for their further belief that no matter what the business, we believe in Jen Millard and we believe that she's a great operator. So I have a great privilege to have, this is my fifth business. So
Wow, well
to see, the best joy is to bring a team together. That is my joy. And that is what I feel like we're doing here. So my intention is to surround I didn't know much about water. I didn't know anything about chemical engineering, but, having a very curious mind and I think recognizing that I need scientific expertise or people with more expertise around me, that does not intimidate me. That makes us more powerful. So part of it is you having to be aware of where is it that I can be a great leader and I can build a wonderful team, but the collaboration of the team and the trust among the team is ultimately what builds any company. Relationships.
Let me pause you there for a second. Sorry. In your previous, so I heard software company, now water company. What were the other three companies?
So I always say, actually 3 software companies,
Okay.
all around consumer intention. And if you open up your bank statement, you see those little tabs of coupons that say use your card and save 10% at Macy's. So my companies were all around consumer intention. And so they're all in that sort of offer space.
And you've exited all of these?
Yes.
So the primary focus right now is on Maine Love.
100% on Maine Love. And I get that question a lot. And I think it's important for especially new entrepreneurs. You have to have an essentialist mindset. You have to be relentless and brave. And you should evaluate how you're giving away your time. And so I got off every board. The only board that I am still on is the Colby trustee board. And I closed down every other advisory role that I was on. You have to have 100%, 110% focus on one key hero. And my hero is water in cans.
So regarding this essentialist mindset, I'm wondering if there isn't sort of a counter thought to that for a second. And I want to go, and I'm not suggesting that there is or isn't. I'm just curious your opinion on it. One of the things I explore with some of my clientele is this idea of niching down, and everybody tells them to niche down rather than creating a niche your own, which is my point of view. When you say you have to have an essentialist mindset, are you simply saying that you should only focus exclusively on one thing at a time, or are you saying something a little bit back?
No, I'm saying at the point that I recognized from consumer intercepts, from our first productions, from our work with the sports team here in Portland at the Hearts of Pine, when you feel that momentum and you see the velocity, right? Doing $500,000 in 5 months in Maine is fantastic volume, right? Is once you see that initial threads of success, you need to bet all in. You need to be all in. You need to push all your chips in.
But it doesn't have necessarily any connotation centered around the idea of fear of expansionism, I guess is where I'm going.
Oh, no, I think you have to be enormously brave.
Got it. Okay.
Epically relentless. You should be not fearful of the bigger market. You should be running towards the bigger market. And if you cannot run towards the bigger market, you really got to kind of sit with yourself. Like, why am I hesitant to run towards the fire?
Right? It really centers around simplifying your focus.
Yes. Lack of distractions. Get rid of all your distractions.
I was reading a few things about you in your onboarding form. You talk about this idea of building your own power. What does that mean structurally inside your company? Is it philosophical or is it more operationalized?
It's more philosophical for me. I love great teams and I love great people that enjoy who they work with. And so, essentially I feel like I'm running a small business school in Maine. So I have myself and then I have a lot of people under 30. They're not wrong. We are running a small business school. Like you're learning more today than you would in class. And we made a horrible mistake yesterday. Let's pick ourselves up and move on. Right. So I do believe in sort of growing community around the company. And then if you grow the right community around the company, and I've seen this in my history, investors should bring more than just capital. They should also bring expertise, love for the founder, help in any way. And I think oftentimes capital is very hard to get right now. I'm in it. We've raised 2.2 here, and we've done a lot with a little. And I'm closing out my convertible note as I'm getting approached for priced rounds. But it has not been easy, right? If you don't have the word AI on the end of your company right now, it's very difficult. And we are the anti-AI investment. It doesn't get any less AI than water in a physical can.
How you said investors should be bringing more to the table than just capital. Explain how does that sort of expose itself in your actual market? Like what are you asking your investors to bring to the table of Maine Love?
So I'd say it's more a founder's perspective of the type of money you wish to bring. And so what I have learned over the years is that a founder cannot do everything by him or herself, right? And the people around the founder are actually the power, right? The network effect of, I need to build a fast-growing CPG model so I can share a 3-year plan with investors, right? I have a gentleman who's an investor who sits on my advisory board, who's an iBanker, right? Who helps me with debt and debt structures, things that I, would struggle on my own, and he can do with a snap, right? Because that's his world. People who have great experience. I have a lot of private equity on my cap table because I don't own anything. I don't own any factories. I don't own any trucks. I don't own a warehouse. So it fits a PE mind of an asset light, operation. And then I think it's important to really focused on the idle economy here. You have factories that are sitting idle that could make something. Why are we not challenging ourselves to make more economic choices for ourselves in Maine? And so you can sit with your brewery and hope that alcohol comes back around. There's a bunch of that going on. You could change your recipes to do a lower ABV. But ideally, we'd love for you to lean in when you're not making great beer and recognize we have a change that's happening generationally. And I don't see consumption coming back to pre-COVID levels.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because it sounds to me like you're putting a lot of pressure on the culture of the company. Is a safe assumption.
The story is the story, right?
Yeah.
The story is the marketing here.
Yeah. And I know, well, that's great on paper, but not everybody follows that discipline, right? You're really big on this culture, and you've handpicked every single one of your employees. Is that correct?
Yep.
What do you think that you see in people that most founders might miss, and why is culture so important for an organization?
It's really the trust underneath the word culture, right? No companies can grow. So there's this concept that, a foxhole mentality. Say the last year was a foxhole for me and 5 people. We've just come through that experience together. The next hire that you make hasn't gone through that foxhole mentality, right? But you sort of have to meet them where they are. You can't expect them to give you credit for being in the foxhole for the last year. You have to meet that new person with the brand of where we are today. And so that's typically, in my experience, a fragile point of, well, you should know that because we did that last year. Can't assume that. We only had 5 people last year, 3 of whom didn't get paid, right? Myself and my 2 co-founders. So, you're really kind of setting up a culture to tell a story with the right mindset. Like, I want people, and I give the best example. One of my water competitors, their top salesperson called me in December and said, Jen, I'd like to come meet with you because I'm tired of working for a soulless water brand.
That says a lot about you.
That says a lot, right? And I put you on my SWOT analysis when I sent my SWOT to Primo Water, right? I'm like, oh my God, I'm on a SWOT. That's so amazing. But now I have individuals from
Is she now working with you?
Yes.
Sorry, I thought you said she. Sorry, forgive me.
Yeah. So, now I have the most epic talent in beverages who are honestly tired of the same drill every day, that want to work for a brand that is focused on love and harmony from Maine.
I love that. I want to come work with you. Let me
You
ask you
should.
this. So what are you looking for when you hire the right people? What is the right person for Maine Love?
So we have a tremendous bias to action here, right? We are happy. I happily make mistakes if we recover quickly, right? So no fear of failure here. It's a fail fast culture. Like all cards on the table, all voices heard. Titles do not equal power here. And that is an important fact.
Mm,
I've worked at many, many matrixed organizations where power was assumed to be title oriented. This is
mm,
not the case. And I make
hmm.
sure that we talk about titles not equating power all the time.
A lot of times those powers, or sorry, those titles are, in my opinion, I spent 15 years in the corporation. A lot of time those titles are not earned, in my opinion.
Correct. Correct.
They're not based upon actual real abilities. They're based on something other that's a little bit skewed, and we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. So,
They also help. They also become blockers. Titles
mm,
can become blockers
yeah.
in how aggressive you want to move, how much agency you give your employees.
Mm,
Right. My agency to my sales team is don't lose money.
mm,
Right, because a can in a hand right now is the best marketing I could ever spend.
mm.
So coming from software, where I used to give millions of dollars of proof of concepts away, let's actually give cans. Like, let's put a can in people's hand. I'd much rather spend money on getting a can into somebody who's not tasted our
Well,
product.
you failed miserably on that with me.
I
Just I
know,
must point out, Jen.
I know.
I'm
Well,
just, I'm just,
we're gonna get tighter on that for sure.
I'm just joking.
It's also my third podcast of the day. So,
Did any of those other hosts have beverages?
well, interesting. My one this morning was in Maine, and I brought them.
Okay, fair
So
enough.
we just need to think forward enough
Fair
to,
enough.
you
Fair
know,
enough.
yeah. And then I'd say
To
the
your
other
credit,
key
I think you were
component,
scheduled. To your credit, I think you were scheduled pretty rapidly, so you might not have had time to. I'm just giving you a hard
I,
time.
it's all good, but you
Yeah.
should, because you should have it on your desk all the time.
I want to go back to this people thing because I'm fascinated by culture. I'm working with a client right now. She's shifting her business operations from recruiting to culture, and I'm fascinated by this model because human behavior, just in of itself, is just simply fascinating, right? And having spent 15 years in the corporation and now the last 14 years as an entrepreneur, there's a radical difference between mindset and how people operate between the two mediums, with the exception of those at the top. How do you, for the most part, some variation to that. How do you, when you're hiring the right people for Maine Love, how do you determine who is the right fit? I want to get sort of to the human side of things. What are you specifically looking for?
So I would say we are not, we don't hire the 4.0 student from Stanford. They probably, didn't work two jobs to put themselves through college, right? I'm a good 3-4 at a great school who had a job in the summer and who, shows some work ethic, right?
Mm,
And I say that with intention because I think a lot of times founders, specifically on the West Coast, because the talent tends to be such high caliber, they're often drawn to the GPA, the shiny object person.
mm,
That may not be the best engineer, right?
mhm,
That may not be the best hire. And so I think over the years, I've just sort of found that um, I move very quickly. People have to have the abundant mindset that they're here to learn and that it's okay to learn on the job. It's okay to make a mistake, pick yourself up, admit the mistake, correct the mistake, try again.
mm,
And we do that over and over and over again
mhm.
until you get it right. And that takes perseverance. It takes bravery, right? And especially, I'd say, in earlier in career, people aren't used to having agency. They're used to being told what to do,
Mm,
right? So if you want to develop other leaders, you have to stand back and provide them agency,
mhm.
room to make mistakes, but also room to make great success.
What is that fine line between agency and responsibility?
Don't lose money, in
Mm,
my mind, right? I'd like you to be open-minded. We want to pursue all opportunities. We do have a big water thesis here, which is events and stadiums and large schools and, those types of pictures in our mind of what we become. But today, it's retail, colleges, and events and stadiums.
Explain this to me, the water thesis. This is not a term I've heard used thesis in business before. But I understand what it means in actual like literary terms, but explain to me what this means to you, water thesis.
So most beverages work really hard to get on shelf at retail, build a brand with a social connection of some sort, and power it onto retail shelves. That's the beverage industry. I don't come from the beverage industry. I come from retail and software. So we look at the business a little differently, right? I'm willing to, I will walk into a store and sell it myself, right? So when you start hiring people and they see the founder dropping off water, just like everybody else, right? I'm not above any task that I ask anybody to do. And then the most important thing on the agency piece is your first reaction would be like, oh, why did you do that? Or, something silly, some emotional reaction, is to really make sure that you can check your emotions in the moment so that people don't feel like, especially young people, let's learn from the experience. Let's not be whipped for the experience, right?
Got it.
It's that old phrase, the beatings continue until morale improves. Let's not be in that camp, right?
Interesting.
Let's give people the responsibility, to your point, to generate revenue for the company.
And that's by giving them ownership in the fact of agency. I'm curious, you talked about nothing is above, no task is above you doing it yourself. Has scaling this business in an industry you know nothing about, and I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but has scaling this business in an industry you know nothing about, has this made you more confident in what you do as a leader, as a founder, or has it made you more aware of what you don't know?
I don't think I could have done this company if I hadn't done all my other companies for lots of reasons. I think, you evolve your leadership style and your intentions over time. This is a very values-based business, right? We want to enter Maine in the water economy and help diversify revenue for brewers. That's our social mission. Our environmental mission is Mainers are very practical and very humble, right? Let's not talk about plastic. Let's not talk about BPA. Let's do something about it. So the Mainer in me is like, all right, why have we not thought of this? Why have we not said Maine has the most epic water? Why are we not utilizing that water? So it's really kind of with intention.
You bottle in aluminum?
All aluminum cans, 16
Why not?
ounce.
Why not glass? Because certainly there's some toxicity to aluminum.
Less and less. So it's kind of a trade-off. So my only other non-software company was a glass container company.
Okay.
It was called Life Factory. It's still alive. We sold it to Thermos in 2017. I barely returned my shareholder capital. Like it was a reasonable exit for shareholders that nobody lost money, but it was expensive. Not epic.
Yeah.
Because glass is ridiculously expensive, not made in the US, imported. And what most people don't recognize is the cover on the glass is actually grinding plastic into the glass.
Oh, wow.
And so the the microplastics in glass are actually equal to some of the microplastics in plastic.
Interesting.
And more importantly, there's no rural communities that recycle glass. And so in my research, right, of course, brewers can only do what their lines can handle, which is typically a 16-ounce tall boy. We also have a 12-ounce hospitality SKU. But if you start looking into recycling, you will find that consumers are so frustrated, right? They don't feel like their recycling matters. And then we ran a little experiment. If you put a Maine Love trash can next to a really ugly recycling center and just tell consumers, please deposit your Maine Love can in the Maine Love can. And statistically, that can is repurposed. 70% of that aluminum is repurposed within 45 days. And just having the consumer articulate the throwaway in their mind is a circular motion. I chose aluminum. It's healthier for me. And I recycled it. Yay for me.
Interesting.
I'm winning.
I was in Austria last summer with my daughter, and there's a coffee company. Actually, most of Austria coffee does the same thing. They give you your own cup but the cup you can reuse the cup, but they'll only pour back into the cup if you have recycled one before that. So they sort of have this credit scoring system based upon how you recycle cups. So I thought it was genius. I love that you adopted that.
So, it's really about, and then, where is the biggest impact to reduce single-use plastic? It's at event stadiums, it's at Disney World, it's on cruise ships, any place today, in hotels and hospitality. All of these groups would like to do something in not plastic, but often don't have choices.
So sorry, quick question. I had an idea in my head as you were talking. So I'm assuming you're sort of eco-conscious, given the fact
Of
that you're
course.
doing, okay,
Yeah.
and you're from Maine. I know that's a very eco-conscious state. In terms of getting consumers to recycle and get involved in sort of more eco-conscious, and I don't know if all of Maine is this way, is there a way that you can utilize your current beverages to reward people for recycling in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah, we've been playing around with some sort of,
Like a QR code?
we are our can has a QR. We could run, some form of points or collection
Mm-hmm.
system. But really what we'd like to reinforce is that education around aluminum, that when you're choosing a beverage, the easiest thing for Yarmouth, Maine to process is an aluminum can. And if I buy a blue Saratoga glass, it's going to sit in a pile of glass till it fills up a container. And then that container gets shipped to Boston or New Jersey. And so it's really about, there's more small towns than urban, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really also with a nod towards what's easiest
Hmm.
for rural communities to process and accept.
Hmm.
And more it is aluminum.
You said earlier in the conversation, we use the word superpower, and what I'm hearing between the lines is you are empowering people to find their superpower, not only the people that you hire,
Right.
but in the people
Great
that
way
you
to say
sell.
it.
Yeah, the people that you sell your water to, like you're educating them and helping them sort of get involved in the sustainability and the ecosystem and all the things, right? Was your What was your superpower before you created this company, and how has that evolved? I'm curious.
Um, I have a history of building great teams. I'm very proud of that. And I think I learned that in my early years at retail, where I had to hire 400 associates per store. I'm dating
Mm.
myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way you get really good at hiring is doing a lot of it, and I
Mm.
did a lot of it in retail, right? With a similar perspective, right? Look a customer in the eye, be kind, helpful, want to maybe be goal orientation, those types of things. And I do believe that with great trust comes great power,
Mm-hmm.
and that everybody starts with like a full gas tank. You don't earn trust. You have to start with trust, and then you might lose a little, right?
Mm-hmm.
But everyone should start with a full tank of
Mm-hmm.
trust at the same point. No one should have to prove that they're trustworthy on the team. Everyone needs to have great love and acceptance that I expect everyone on this table to have my back in what they do,
Wait,
and that
sorry,
they're
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to go back to that.
yeah,
Nobody should have to prove their trust. So that would assume that the people that you have hired, A, you've gotten it right 100% of the time. But certainly there are people that, I mean, just
yeah.
the nature of economics, certainly there are people that have behavioral mechanisms that are not as trustworthy as others. So can you unpack that just real quickly? I just want to understand that better.
But so we run a team interview process here.
Okay.
We're small enough where everybody meets everyone. We do what I would call a light version of the Amazon or Google process with the loop. Take a 40-page interview guide and work it down to 4 pages. So we take the best of what I know of how to hire and how to interview,
Mm.
and then apply that to a smaller team, and then recognize my head of sales has not managed a lot of people. He's 28 years old.
Mm.
So how do you help them become better hirers and better leaders? Right? He's going to make a mistake. We've had a few 2x4s, right? But you quickly have to help them recover to get their confidence back, and also that you're not penalizing them.
Mm.
And so, sure, you're not going to make it 100 out of 100. You're going to always have a human wild card. That's something you didn't understand during the process. We also have an executive coach here
Mm.
that I've worked with for 20 years, that every employee has access to for their own personal
Oh,
development.
I love that.
Right. So Nancy Ralston has has helped me through every business that I have ever operated, and I adore her. And I'm grateful for her support because it helps earlier in career have someone else to talk to,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's such a gift to
Yeah.
give early in career. No one has an executive coach in Maine. How do we
No.
how do we manifest a small business school with the right orientation around values so that we all, it's not perfect every day. You know, if you didn't have debate, it wouldn't be a good, lively discussion. But you should be able to debate differences in a workplace and come to a conclusion. And when you come to that conclusion, everyone says, I might not have agreed with the decision, but this is the decision and we're moving forward.
I love all that. 20 years with the same coach is phenomenal. It's interesting, and I just have sort of a sidebar. For the first, let's say, 5 years of my entrepreneurial journey in my first company, I did not ever even consider hiring a coach. It's just not something that I had ever sort of processed through. And, I can't beat myself up for it. It is what it is. Like everything has been an experience to learn and grow and expand. And in the process of doing such, I realized I should probably hire a coach at this point. And then when I did hire a coach, I started seeing like the monumental differences that brought to the table, which brings me to my next question. I don't think that every company, every founder is necessarily built to always grow. I think people are always sort of thinking of like, it's time to expand, it's time to grow. Sometimes optimizing efficiencies and staying where you are is the better through line, right? When did you decide that it was time, and what was the catalyst or what was the mitigating factor that said it's time for Maine Love to expand and grow?
So interesting. I've always expressed this business as the 95 corridor. That's 22 states if you go over to Atlanta and over to Texas. I'm not sure how far west Maine plays. It has an aspiration of Maine, definitely Maine to Florida. I had always planned on a Maine to Florida expression, primarily to offset seasonality, right? I used to run 400 cases a week in Maine, and I'm running 100 cases a month in January, right? So the product is built for people from away with a nostalgia, a relationship, a desire to go to Maine. What does that nostalgia feel like? What does that provenance mean to you emotionally? And you can talk to anyone who's been to Maine, who's heard of Maine, wants to come to Maine, went to Acadia, went to summer camp, went to college. Those are the memories, the aspirations of Maine, the experiences that we're really trying to represent as the brand.
Interesting. So I want to go back to this question because I think it's really important. I'm dealing with a couple of clients right now who think it's time to grow. And in sort of doing an audit of their brand, I don't think they're ready to grow. So I'm curious. Yeah, some companies are not equipped to handle growth. So and there's just a lot of unknowns in expansion. And there's two arguments to that. Well, we'll figure it out. That's part of the process. But at what cost sometimes? So if your business were to double tomorrow, you're in the growth phase right now. If your business were to double tomorrow, right? This 95 quarter adventure that you have, what would be the most susceptible to breaking first?
So every state in the nation licenses drinking water. It is not licensed by the FDA. You have to meet an FDA standard, but then there's 48 states worth of water regulation. And so each state requires an independent water license. So we now have a majority of the water licenses down 95. That was the first thing. I couldn't expand. I was held back, if you will, because I had to meet some regulatory requirements. And the licensing work is rugged because every state is different. It's also expensive, right? Every state requires a special test in a lot of cases. But what you learn is as you move down 95 and you open up the corridor, this is a very easy story to tell. People in Massachusetts love Maine. People in New York love Maine, right? So you can see people's emotional connection to the brand. When you hand them the can, they smile. Oh, I love Maine. I went to summer camp there. Oh, I remember this trip. I went to Acadia, and really it's, relationships, experiences, and memories. It's the same no matter what you're selling. And so we're really focused on this provenance of Maine. and how far that plays down 95.
Hmm.
But my expectation is not only to double my business, I think I'll double what I did in Maine, because I started May 12th of last year. So I'm going to get $1 million out of Maine, but my goal this year is 5 million. 500 to 5 million is a huge jump, 100x.
Why? I understand the metaphorical meaning of the 95 because it runs Florida to Maine. I'm wondering if there isn't a place, sorry, this is just me thinking out loud,
No,
and you didn't ask for insight. Is there something to play with the Appalachian Trail in regards to that?
interesting. We are actually about to become the water of the what is the group that runs the huts and the
I don't know, but
we are actually in conversations with
like,
the people that maintain the trails of the
I love
Appalachia.
that.
I don't know if I can't remember the exact name. We do, LL Bean puts
I love
out
that.
beach boxes in a lot of places. So let's say you come to Maine and you want to use a paddleboard. You're not going to buy a paddleboard. So they've put a bunch of these little huts around different places in Maine, and we stock them with emergency water, because a lot of people don't realize there's no water when you get there. We do.
I know. I've hiked it. Parts of it.
We do a lot of events where we we do cycling. No one comes to Maine to sit. People are very active, relaxing, right? So we're biking, we're hiking, we're canoeing. You're ocean, you have an ocean mind, you're fishing, whatever that might be. Hopefully you see that vitality come through in our social media expression.
I love that. I want to talk about you as a leader for a minute. You've built 4 other companies before this one. This is your 5th. There's sort of a standard here. You build a company and then you exit. What's your plans with Maine Love? What is the ultimate objective for this company?
Well, I didn't build those other companies alone, and those other companies had pretty significant venture equity, venture-backed efforts. So I'd also never raised a friends and family round, right? My neighbor walked over with the first 50,000, was like, "Christy and I would like to give you $50,000." And I'm like, "Oh my God, am I actually going to do this? Like, am I going to take money from my friends and family?" And I was like, I think I'm just going to have to get right with this. This is how it's going to happen up here, And so I've been very mindful that my table is filled of individuals, is not, I do not have a fund pressure. But a lot of the people on my cap table are, "Jen, you've never owned anything longer than 3 or 4 years. We know you're going to flip this." However, I think in this thesis, I've purposefully set this business up as an LLC for profit sharing interest. Water can be a dividend business. This could be a beautiful cash flow business. And I didn't answer your earlier question directly, but one of my superpowers is business models. And this is a very effective business model because of the asset light model. So we've had a couple tire kicks to sell the company already. I own all my IP here. Of course, we have declined. I'm not ready to do that. But, this is ultimately for the love of Maine. So we would think of this in 5-year increments. Beverages are usually 5-year halos. 5 to 7. So if past 5 years I'm generating cash, I could do a dividend business. I could also take a venture check and do a C Corp conversion. So I've tried to leave as many options open. So optionality, not like in the software business, I typically knew who I was selling my product to before I made it. I'm going to sell this to these 3 people.
So optionality, and sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just curious because I'm fascinated by founders.
I could do a transaction. I could take a number that would be meaningful enough to take it to my investors and do a private transaction. I could continue to raise debt and continue to expand, because most beverages run on debt. And think about, who would be an acquirer here, right? The other way to think about it is water is forever. Everyone drinks water. Why would you sell a water company when we're entering an era when water is about to be the new oil?
I don't disagree with that.
So I've tried to create a company that has the most options for shareholders.
I have a shameless request of this, and I'm just curious what your take on this is. As you scale this business and you scale this company, and let's just say you do get to the exit conversation, I feel like a lot of people sell their company to big corporate.
Well, I think they have the money, right?
I
If you look at
understand. Hold
the
on. Hear me
M&A
out. Hold on.
ecosystem,
Hold on.
right? Like
Hold-
it's really about who has the capital.
I understand, but hear me out for a second. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
For a company that is brand rooted in community, your brand is literally based upon the love of Maine and sort of the idea of I'm just going to call them the town people, the small town people that you've built the company upon. But if you sell this to the corporation, they inevitably change the recipe of everything, and it just sort of becomes all about money. And I'm not saying this isn't about money. I understand. I run a business. We have to make money. This is the commerce-based world. But how do you preserve the sustainability of a company that you have blood, sweat, and tears built into it, the human capital, the financial capital, the time, et cetera, so that when you do get to the point of exiting, it doesn't just completely get bastardized by a corporation taking it over and changing the entire recipe?
Well, one of the lessons that I had to learn when I sold, and I didn't do it alone. I had two co-founders. When we sold our company to MasterCard, and I had to stay at MasterCard for 3 years, which was an incredible experience to see how money moves around the world, but over traveled, overused, I would say. But I would say that time at MasterCard was watching them slice by slice, not actually use the product in the way it was designed because of privacy laws, and that they were afraid, right? So it was frustrating, right? To be there as a founder and watch your baby get cut by 1,000 cuts. So I think choosing who is a good strategic and why, to your point, you're looking for a why. Why would you do it, and who would be the why? I think that takes great, what's the right word I'm thinking of? Well, I had
Intentionality.
Yeah, and that's what I'm looking for, right? Sorry, it's Friday afternoon. It's been a long week.
Yeah, and I've been grilling you for an hour, so
No, but with great intention, right? I think that's really, if you build a company with intention and you build it correctly, the options will come.
Interesting.
And so I know what a strategic option feels like. I know what selling maybe to a main entity. The other option here would be a beautiful ESOP company. Right? So I've tried to create a way for us in a very maneuverable fashion to have lots of exit strategies. And I hope that I could become an ESOP, to be honest. I would love my employees to be owners and to carry it forward, right? We've got to earn it. We've got to win it to do it. But I'm very bullish on this next year. I'm super excited. And we have great interest. So just got to keep up the pace and not get distracted.
I love that. I think I've run out of time with you. Felt like there's some of the things I didn't cover, but maybe we do a round two. What I respect about, if I may for a second, if I may riff for a second, what I respect about what you're building is that this isn't just a beverage company. For at least that's what I'm hearing, right? Between the lines.
Correct. This is about economic development for Maine.
Economic infrastructure. There's an identity tied to it. It's a bet on a place, a location, and you're doing it in a capital environment that is not necessarily handing out favors. Like we've talked about a couple of different things. So for anybody who's listening to this episode and who's building something from scratch, like Jennifer has done 5 times now, no inherited distribution, no dynasty, no automatic leverage. I think one of the things that sort of jumped out at me during this call and this conversation is, number one, your product matters, your distribution matters, your capital matters, and your clarity matters. And you're sort of handling all of those as you scale, and you use the word thesis. The market will test your thesis, and your team will test your leadership, and investors will test your conviction, and you're handling all of those with grace and a lot of clarity. So I really appreciate you coming on the show today. It's been a fantastic conversation. I learned a lot, and I know my listeners are really going to enjoy this episode, and I really feel like there's probably a part 2 to this as we watch your journey unfold.
I'm very proud to be the Entrepreneur of the Year in Maine as nominated by Maine Business Magazine. It's an incredible honor for the team. No entrepreneur does it alone. And we're just thrilled to be here in 18 months.
Wow. I did not know I was in the presence of a celebrity as well. So thank you.
Well,
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
That's a fantastic honor.
it's a wonderful feeling to know that people see you doing it and people are rewarding you for doing it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, whatever it is validation that you are sort of working on a trajectory that matters and having impact on other people. And so, yeah, so congratulations. Well played. That's wonderful news.
Thank you.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you showing up and being transparent and honest with us. And thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Just real quickly, if people want to connect with you and just want to follow the journey, I'm assuming you're sort of telling the story as you expand the business and move down the corridor into the Appalachian territory. You're kind of telling the story.
Absolutely. And I would say the best expression of our brand is our Instagram handle, which is Maine Love Life. And then we have a web expression as well at mainelove.com. You can order product there. You can hear the brewer's story. You can look up our testing. It's a very transparent. I also believe in, radical transparency around consumer goods. So if the customer wants to look at the water test, it's right on the site.
That's amazing. Well, I appreciate this, and I'm going to follow along on the journey as well, and I'd love to stay connected with you. I think you're doing some cool things, and I could probably learn a whole bunch of things from you myself, so thank you.
And send me your address so we can cycle some water to you.
That wasn't passive aggressive enough during the show, was it?
No, look, on all the podcasts, we always want to be the water on your table all the time.
Yeah, you can see I'm always drinking something. So usually it's tea or coffee or something of that nature. But I drink.
We'll make sure we get you stocked up. No problem. And I'd be happy to do another. I would specifically love to talk to you about the Unlearn everything, because that's actually part of what I teach is, now that you've graduated, how do you actually enter the workforce? Right.
Maybe we could talk about some sort of workshops. This is one of the workshops I actually do with businesses, is sort of this idea of identity and these inflection points. Mm-hmm. And how do you unpack all of the narrative that you've been taught, everything you've learned, all the trauma, all the scars, all of these things that continue to just sort of build upon themselves. And then suddenly you find yourself in these existential crises and you don't know why. It's because you haven't taken the time to sort of unlearn the things that brought you to where you are. And they may have served you quite well, but now you're at this inflection point and it's time for the next evolution, whatever that may look like. So now it's time for a new narrative, a new story, and sort of understanding.
Well, and I would share, like, all the CPG people are saying, "Oh, Jen, you're just moving so fast. You need to slow down. This is not how we do it." And I'm like, yeah, Horowitz or Bessemer, never in my lifetime would anyone tell me to slow down from Silicon Valley, ever.
I love it.
Like, in fact, you should be moving faster at all times. You should be working 24 hours a day, and you should be working faster to make me money. Right. And interestingly, I think we've gotten the success we've had because we don't come from the beverage industry. Right. If I did everything the way it was done, we wouldn't be here. Right. I run 2-week sprints at a CPG company because that's how I know how to build a company.
That's a great tagline.
What?
If you do everything the way that it's always been done, then you would be doing nothing.
Correct.
All right, then. Jen,
all right, let's do it again. Yeah. And you got to come to Maine. Let's help me understand what you'd be interested in speaking about and how we might, think about it, and maybe even do a podcast from Colby, because we have a lot of builders from Colby, early entrepreneurs.
That'd be phenomenal.
And we're coming up on our big pitch competition, which is like a $25,000 prize. Has to be team-based, right? It's co-founder, no solopreneurs. It's business model canvas. It's structural development for entrepreneurship. And that would be probably I think where I would see you plug in the most, because I think students would love you and you'd get awesome audiences.
All right. Well, let's talk about it. I would love to. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's the Halloran Lab for Entrepreneurship at Colby.
If you are listening to today's episode, first of all, thank you. Jennifer, thank you for being here. It's been just a refreshing and very candid conversation. I appreciate your honesty and transparency. And if anybody does want to connect, it's Maine Love Life. Again, Maine, like the state, MAIN. There's an E at the end for those of you who are spelling challenged. Maine Love Life on Instagram. Jennifer, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for sharing your zone of genius with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. That's it for today, folks. Thank you. If this episode hit you, like it, subscribe it, leave a review. It helps a lot more than you think. And it helps the right people find this show and help us keep growing so we can continue to produce amazing episodes. You can find me at thebrandstoryteller.com if you're interested in connecting with me. And everything else about this episode, the guest, the websites, the social media handles, they are all linked below. I'll see you in the next show.